There we go. All right, thank you, everybody, for coming. This is a call to order for the Big C meeting of January 2023. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. As we usually, let's go around the room. Let's start with Mayor Queen down in the end, and we'll do the council first.
Go for you, Mayor of Redington Beach.
Tyler Payne, Mayor of Treasure Island.
David Will, Mayor, Redington Beach.
Mayor Bob Schmidt, Bel Shore.
Mayor Vinnie Rock Beach.
Mayor Hal Johnson, St. Pete Beach.
Mary Beth Henderson, Mayor Redington Shores.
Dave Gaddis, Mayor of Bel Air Beach.
And Bashir, Vice Mayor, Indian Shores.
Lena Teixeira, Council for Clearwater.
John Hendricks, Mayor of Madeira Beach.
Okay, let's start over there.
Jenny Blacksburg, Commissioner, Town of Redington Shores. Susie Soper, Commissioner, Bel Air Bluffs.
Stan Sofer, Bel Air Beach.
Yes, ma'am.
Melissa Hill, National Wildlife Federation's Gold Program.
Zach Westhoff, Nelson County Coastal Management.
John Bishop, Nelson County Coastal Management.
Cindy Kraus, Vice Mayor Commissioner, Town of Redington Shores. Carly Delinsky, Seashore Conservation Program, Clearwater Marine Aquarium.
Tyler Pollard, Clearwater Marine Aquarium.
Lindsay Flynn, Sea Turtle Conservation Program at Clearwater Marine Aquarium.
Larry Shear, Commissioner, Nelson Coast Fire.
Chris Kelly, Waterfront Realty.
Debbie Lawson, Commercial Real Estate Coordinator.
Andrew Noble, Forward Pinellas. Art Colucci, Clerk Treasurer, Tom Bel Air Shore.
Morning, everyone. Bonnie Tano, Town Administrator for the Town of Indian Shores.
Good morning, Peter Clark. I'm the president of Tampa Bay Watch.
Good morning, Chiquita Clark, Duke Energy.
Morning, Sam Jenkins, SPC's Institute for Strategic Policy.
Kathleen Beckman, Vice Mayor of Clearwater. Robin Miller, Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce. Beth Tomorrow, also Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce.
Cardinal Bowling, Cardinal Financial, Mortgage Runner.
Marlo at Nelson County.
Kylan Collins, Waterfront Realty.
Christina Tolbert, President of CMC Fundraising.
Morning, everybody. Jill Donovan, Treasurer Island Deer Beach Chamber of Commerce.
Morning, I'm Jenna Byrne. I'm the founder of Water Warrior Alliance.
David Buchanan, Water Warrior Alliance, Green Master, and everything.
Good morning, Robin Gomez, City Madeira Beach City Manager. Welcome to our city. Jeff Shoebridge, Town Administrator, Redington Shores.
I think we've gotten everything. Okay, I think we got everybody. Welcome. Do I have any changes to the agenda or motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And how about the minutes from last time that was in our packet? Anybody got changes or approval?
Second.
We have motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Treasurer's report, Cookie.
Good morning. Our opening balance as of November 1st was $1,506.02. There were no receipts. We had a disbursement of a digital EO invoice, which was $7.92. So our ending balance is $1,498.
Any questions? Okay, can I move to approval?
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have no correspondence of note, so on to new business. Peter Clark, there he is. There's Peter. Peter's the founder and president of Tampa Bay Watch, and let him tell you some more. So go ahead, Peter.
Good morning. Thank you. It's a pleasure to join everybody this morning, especially on this glorious day.
I am the president and founder of Tampa Bay Watch. We're celebrating 30 years of restoring and protecting the Tampa Bay estuary. Everybody here really knows the importance of the Bay. It's very important that we celebrate the diversity and the water quality achievements that we've been able to make over the past 30 or 40 years in the Tampa Bay estuary. In particular, water quality. You don't need to memorize this, but it's important that you realize that back in the 70s, water quality in Tampa Bay was horrible. And it wasn't until the 80s when we started to implement things like wastewater treatment controls, industrial discharges to the Bay, stormwater management practices, and regional habitat restoration projects that the Bay really started to turn around. And by the time we got to the 2000s, the Bay was in really pretty good condition. And we celebrate that. We're one of the few coastal bodies of water in the United States, if not the world, that we can say, because of what we've been able to do for the last 30 or 40 years, have truly made a difference in water quality. And as a result of that, things like seagrass beds that depend on healthy water quality have been able to rebound, and we've been able to hit our targets. So we celebrated a lot in the 2000s as water quality improved, seagrasses started to grow. But as we look in the future, we have a lot of other issues that we're starting to deal with that maybe we hadn't dealt with before. So water quality in Upper Tampa Bay in particular and other parts of the Bay have started to degrade. So as we take 3 steps forward, we're also taking 2 steps back in a lot of ways. And with the release of the Piney Point discharge last year, a massive red tide that resulted right afterwards, and even longer than that, we've had these large macroalgae blooms in the Bay that have really put a dent in our seagrass coverage and water quality in the Bay. I point this chart out here because this is seagrass in the Bay, and the direction that seagrass growth goes in the Bay is the direction that the Bay goes. So as water quality improves, seagrasses grow. As we get more coverage in the Bay, then we have better habitat for fish and wildlife. So it's a positive cycle that we've been able to get in. But those numbers are starting to go down, and if I was able to get the 2020s in here, they would go down even farther. So at one point we hit our 1950 goals for the Bay, but we've literally lost about 7,000 acres of seagrass in the Bay in the last 5 years because of a lot of the water quality impacts that have occurred. Now, most of you know, why do we care about the Bay? It's such a huge economic driver in our area, contributing $22 billion to our regional economy. 1 in every 5 jobs depends on Tampa Bay. And as I say Tampa Bay, I'm also talking about the Gulf of Mexico as well. I mean, we don't have to think about too many years ago when we had a red tide event all along our Gulf Coast, what that did to tourism, what that did to the economy while that red tide bloom was going on. Whether or not it was bad on your shores, the perception was that it was bad everywhere. A lot of people stopped coming to our beautiful region. And almost 90% of the total employment occurs within the watershed of Tampa Bay in our area. So as I mentioned, there's still a lot of things that we need to do in order to keep progress moving forward. We often hear a lot about marine debris, invasive species that are coming in, most recently lionfish that are affecting our local fisheries. But as I walked around the room this morning, there was a lot of discussion on the kiosk about the development of the area. You know, we live on a big sandbar. We got very, very good at dredging and filling up that sand and creating waterfront development. Boca Ciega Bay is an international example of maybe what not to do to a bay. 28% of the surface water area of Boca Ciega Bay was filled for residential development. Everybody wants to live on the water. And because of that, we got very, very good at creating more land for people to live on. Red tide has been a major issue these past few years. Sarasota Bay has been affected by a red tide each and every year. We really don't like to see that kind of trend continuing. It seems like it's getting bigger in our area and more persistent. It lasts longer in our coastal bodies of water. So these are the types of issues that really keep us awake at night. As I mentioned earlier, Tampa Bay Watch is celebrating 30 years of restoring and protecting the Bay. we were organized to provide the opportunity for the community to take a hands-on role in restoring and protecting the bay. So we're in the construction business. We drive pickup trucks, we drive Carolina skiffs in an effort to get the community involved with restoring and protecting the bay. Just a couple of examples of some of our programs and projects. And as you look at this, a lot of what you'll see are living shoreline projects or those kind of communities that you can do to restore the shoreline area to help buffer against erosion, improve water quality, and provide habitat for fish and wildlife. And as you're looking at coastal resiliency, you talk about green infrastructure. In many cases, these are the types of projects that you'll be looking at in the future for your local governments as well. So Tampa Bay Watch, as a nonprofit, we have a wonderful opportunity to look around the bay and see what the problems are, and then work with the community to address those problems. So we do a lot of different projects. Probably our biggest program right now is oyster restoration. And we have 3 different types of techniques. We construct marine-friendly concrete oyster domes that we install along urbanized areas of the bay or areas that receive extensive erosion. We put out these oyster shell bars, which are shell bags that after a year or two, they look very much like a natural oyster community out in Tampa Bay. And then finally, we have a lot of homeowners that ask about if they're able to install these oyster communities, and quite often they need a permit. So we developed a program called Vertical Oyster Gardens that we're able to give away to waterfront homeowners that have docks or seawalls that they can install under their docks for free and help provide many of those habitats that oysters do in our community. So here's a couple of slides. This is a major project that we've been working on at MacDill Air Force Base. These are, again, the marine-friendly reef balls that have been out in the water for about a year. As you look behind, there's an oyster shell bar, and then higher than that, it's a sandy beach that we planted with salt marsh grass. Come back after a couple of years and you can see the reef ball fields are completely covered with oysters. The oyster shell bars are doing a great job of protecting the toe of the salt marsh. So we can recreate land if you have the right conditions, mainly a good tidal range, a nice angle of the shoreline. Again, this is at MacDill Air Force Base. You see a lot of erosion going on along the shoreline. They didn't really care that their shoreline was eroding until a storm blew the sand up into the golf course. And once the sand went up in the golf course, they knew they had to get serious about this. And they approached Tampa Bay Watch and said, you know, we're looking at putting up a seawall along several miles of our shoreline. Is there something natural that we can do? And we've been out there since 2000 constructing a number and variety of different oyster and living shoreline techniques along that shore. Here's some graphics. Again, here's the reef ball field that goes up the coast. Right in here, once the reefs are established, the sand starts to fill in naturally behind it. And as you go out another year or so, we plant that sandy area in order to stabilize the shoreline. And then the sand grows out to the reef ball fields behind that. And eventually that will get planted or it'll grow out naturally to the reef ball fields. And you can see how it extends up along the shoreline. A more local project is the one we're working on right now at Lassing Park. This is a photo that was taken Earth Day last year. And again, you can see these reef balls that have just gone out in the water, the shell bars that are being constructed behind, and then planting with the salt marsh grass behind that. That was a project the city of St. Petersburg asked Tampa Bay Watch to develop, and they like it so much we're continuing down along the Lassing Park shoreline as well. So here's some shell bars example. These were done with local schools at Bay Vista Park in southern St. Petersburg. Again, a shell bar is we'll have 20 tons of oyster shell delivered to a boat ramp where our volunteers will shovel up about 10 tons a day. This is a shell bag, brand new. And this shell bag here is about a year's worth of oyster growth. And in Tampa Bay, we're very, very fortunate that if we put something hard out in the bay, we can grow oysters. And you may notice that on your dock pilings or your boat if it sits too long in the water. That's a good thing when you're trying to restore the habitats back out into the bay. We've lost about 90% of our oyster communities in Tampa Bay proper. Oysters are very, very important. They're water quality filters. They'll filter about 50 gallons of water a day, each individual mature oyster. And they're removing the nutrients, they're removing the phytoplankton from the water, and they're also removing what feeds the red tide out there in the bay. So when we think about what can Tampa Bay Watch do about red tide, these are the types of communities that we try to facilitate wherever we can around the bay to help remove the nutrients, help remove the food source for the red tide organism itself. We also do community salt marsh plantings around the bay. We have a very active program where we go out in the schools. I got a couple slides as well. We also do community projects on the weekends. This photo here is another before and after at MacDill Air Force Base. You can see the piling here and the same piling down here in the lower photograph. It is not rocket science. We get the right elevation, we install the right plants. You can recreate these shorelines back into the Tampa Bay system. Here's another one at Cockroach Bay Aquatic Preserve, a terrible name for a beautiful part of the Tampa Bay estuary. The Spaniards used to call the horseshoe crabs cockroaches of the sea. So this was actually named after horseshoe crabs, not necessarily the bug you try to stomp whenever you see them. Here's another before and after. This was a man-made tidal pond to the aquatic preserve. Our volunteers and our school groups come in and plant it, and you can see this wonderful salt marsh that grows up in a short amount of time. In Tampa Bay, we will plant salt marsh because it grows very, very well. But we also know that over time, mangroves will volunteer in and eventually grow up and shade out the salt marsh. So although we plant the salt marsh, we fully realize that it's more natural to mature into a mangrove marsh in the bay. We also have a great program where we go out in the schools. We learned early on that if we needed volunteers during the week, we needed to go and get the kids to start working on restoring the bay. We've had upwards of about 18 middle and high schools that grow salt marsh in their on-campus nurseries. We're now starting to look around at different local governments to do regional nurseries. So not only the schools can come and grow the salt marsh plants, but different community groups within the different locations can also come and help us with these different types of projects as well. I think St. Pete Beach is our first one up that we're exploring that opportunity with. So each school can grow about 6,000 plants in this relatively small nursery. But if they pulled out 5,000 of those plants and split them out on 1 meter centers in the bay, that's about an acre of salt marsh restored back into Tampa Bay. So they truly can make a significant difference in the recovery of the bay. Here's another photo. We've been able to pick the low-hanging fruit in Tampa Bay with these large-scale regional restoration projects. These photos here are from the salt ponds, literally over by Piney Point Creek. Some of the discharge from the industrial spill went through this restored coastal areas along the bay. This is about a 2,000 acre coastal restoration project on the Tampa Bay estuary. Used to be agricultural lands that I say we, but it's actually the Water Management District and Hillsborough County carved out the tidal ponds. And then we, as in Tampa Bay Watch, would come in with our volunteers and our school groups in order to replant those areas and get the habitat established. Do a lot of coastal cleanups throughout the year, anywhere from 6 on, including some derelict crab trap projects. We have this program that we work with the Florida Airboat Association in the middle of winter. When it's really cold and extreme low tides, you can see these abandoned crab traps miles away. And of course, it's a very, very popular event because people can go out on airboats and do something positive by removing these abandoned crab traps out in the bay. We also do the Great Bay Scallop Search, one of our most popular programs, where we'll get between 160 to 200 volunteers, mostly families with their boats, snorkeling through the seagrass beds to document the recovery of scallops back into the bay. They are like the miner's canary, very, very sensitive to water quality. and they blinked out of the bay in and around 1960. And as water quality improves, seagrasses start to come back into the bay. Seagrasses as well as the scallops. And by documenting scallop recovery, it's a community monitoring resource that helps provide science back onto the recovery of the Tampa Bay estuary. So while we were doing our restoration projects, we started to do more and more work with school kids. And when we acquired the property out in Tierra Verde, the first thing we wanted to do was start to be able to hold educational marine science programs from the Tierra Verde facility. So we have a boat that we're able to take the kids out on the bay and see firsthand why we treasure it so much. And it's amazing how many kids that live within 15 or 20 minutes away from Tampa Bay Watch has never been on a boat before, or they've never been to the beach before. So our goal is to work with as many Title I schools as we possibly can so that they can experience some of the things that we take for granted. We also do 8 weeks of summer camp programs. Last year, they sold out in 10 minutes. So if you want to get your kids or the grandkids involved with the Tampa Bay Watch summer camps, make sure you find out the date, get your computer started, and jump on it as quick as you possibly can. Estuary Adventures in Tierra Verde, we do about 3,500 students a year, as well as the 8 weeks of summer camps. In our new facility at the St. Petersburg Pier, the Discovery Center, does about another 2,500 kids at that location as well. So the Tierra Verde facility really ran out of the number of days in the year that they're able to bring kids out and run our programs. So when St. Petersburg was developing the pier, it was a natural growth area for us to try to manage the marine science building down there on the pier. And the city agreed, and we established the Discovery Center really to tell the story of the restoration of the Tampa Bay estuary and the Tampa Bay Watch programs. So this is our public facing facility that does help to tell that story. And the goal of it is whether you live in Redington Beach or somewhere out in the Midwest, there is something that you can do in your community to make the environment a better place. This is what we do here in Tampa Bay to restore water quality and habitat. But if you're up in the Midwest, it may be a stream restoration or a forest restoration, or out in the Northwest, it would be salmon recovery. So this is an example that as tourists come to see, we can show them some of the different examples that we do here in Tampa Bay. They also have a classroom there. We wanted to be closer to the communities that we're trying to reach, and the Discovery Center does that as well. And they do a lot of different programs than we typically do out in Tierra Verde, like lionfish dissection. They also have a classroom boat that does eco tours. So we'll take kids out in the morning in and around downtown St. Petersburg and Coffee Pot Bayou, and then we run eco tours in the afternoon that are open for the public. And that's it, essentially, in the nutshell. We organize between 8,000 and 10,000 community volunteers a year. It's all about getting different community groups and people involved with hands-on restoration. They're more apt to protect it and share that with their kids if they actively get involved. And that's why we do so many hands-on programs around the Bay. If you'd like to find out more, sign up for our email blast that we send out each and every week. I know a number of you are members of Tampa Bay Watch, and we appreciate your help and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. That brought up a couple of questions that I had. One was, you pointed out that one project that was down there near the Piney Point spill that you did.
Yes.
Did that spill kill the project or did it feed it?
So it did not kill the project. To the best of my knowledge, it didn't burn
Mhm.
any of the grasses, which it could have. It came down through ditches and eventually into Piney Point Creek before it was discharged. They really tried to divert most of it farther to the south and try to clean it up before it got up to Bishop's Harbor.
Okay. The other question I came up was, I had heard that because of the red tide outbreak, that we were losing a lot of seagrass because it shades the seagrass from getting sunlight, which was starving manatees. Did we lose a bunch of manatees during that period of time? Do you know?
So I don't have the answer to that. It's a logical extension.
Mhm.
And manatees can also have mortality directly as a result of red tide. it helps to, it makes them sicker, so they spend more time at the surface of the water where they breathe in the red tide as well. When you do have red tide blooms and the mackerel algae blooms afterwards, it does shade out the seagrass, and we have noticed widespread losses of seagrass that typically are growing in very, very healthy areas of the bay. But we have so much seagrass in the bay that helps to compensate for the loss for the number of manatees that we have here. But I can certainly look into it, see which number of manatees were lost directly as a result of the red tide and the macroalgae.
Just the
events
curiosity on
afterwards.
my part.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to give you anything more to do. So.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
research project.
I've worked with Peter since one of the early 90s, I think, when he first got started. And I think one of the first projects we worked on was we had over, I think it was 300 kids in Bloomingdale High School down and we put seagrass in along the McDill golf course down there on the beach. And, you know, everything from, you know, we actually started some of the seagrass nurseries that you were talking about. I know there's one right up just off the thing. They had one at Madeira Beach Middle School.
Middle school, exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that was it.
And they're still very active in our
Are they?
programs over there.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because I remember the first time we harvested over there, we went up in the bay here a little further and took them out on a boat and, you know, the kids go, you know, they jumping in the water and everything was like herding cats. Yeah, it was really a lot of fun. The kids spent the whole morning out there doing it and then we took the boat over to McDonald's and fed them. So, but yeah,
And they'll never forget that day.
yeah. I
They
know.
may not remember
It's true.
exactly what they were doing, but they know the big picture of
Yeah.
why they were out there.
Well, you know, one thing too is that when I was still working for about 10 years, I had an office on Rocky Point that looked right towards the international airport and you had that lagoon in between. And every morning I could see there was a couple of ospreys that would go by with breakfast, you know, throwing a big fish along. I had a nesting pair of bald eagles and I'd literally seen porpoises playing and doing flips in the water and shark, you know, feeding frenzies out there as well. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm less than a mile from one of the biggest, most busiest international airports around. And so we're doing something right. So. you know,
Restore the habitat, water quality comes back,
Yeah.
so do the wildlife that depend on it too.
Yeah, great. Well, listen, thank you for everything. you do.
Sure.
Any other comments from the? Why don't you turn that on, please? So they can hear you. Not first. There you go.
The vertical oyster gardens for the residents.
Mhm.
So how, we want to get some of the residents because we have a ton of docks and I think that they would like that. How do we get involved with you? Just call you and have a discussion?
That's exactly right. Eric Plage is our coordinator for the vertical oyster gardens. And we've had Saturday events where people will build them and then we give them away to different communities. If I remember right, the city of Gulfport has about 400 of those hanging underneath their municipal pier.
Okay.
We have a number in downtown Tampa under Citgo petroleum docks. Oysters grow very, very well in industrial polluted areas. And as long as you're not trying to eat them, it still provide a habitat.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes. Wonderful. Discovery Center is open every day of the year except Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I believe it opens up at 10 o'clock. During the week, it probably closes at 5 or 6 and a little bit later on the weekend. You bet. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity coming this morning. Thank you again.
Okay.
Feel free to check in with us if we can ever help in your community in any way.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
You bet.
Moving along here, old business, we don't have any. Discussion items. The county beach lighting regulation. John, yeah, John Bishop from county is here.
Good morning, everybody. As you know, I'm John Bishop from Pinellas County, and about twice a summer, I send you all long lists of problem lighting on the beach. So I'm here to discuss that with you real quick and try to find a path forward. Last summer, we instituted a a turtle lighting task force to try to figure out how we can make progress. Because we haven't been making progress really with fixing the lighting on the beach. We had 189 or 184 disorientations this year, and that's up. It's sort of a continuing trend, except for I think 2020 and maybe 21 because of the storms and COVID. There's no people on the beach, so there's no lights. But ever since then, it's been the other years, it's all been an increasing trend. Nesting is increasing. It's going to become a bigger problem. The more turtles there are, the more to get disoriented. And we know every year there's some that end up on Gulf Boulevard, unfortunately. And, that's never good. And I don't think any of us want that. So we've been trying to figure out a way to make this easier. And one of the ideas we had, because, Pinellas County is one of 4 counties in the state that doesn't have a lighting ordinance, or at least coastal counties. We thought maybe if we made a Pinellas County lighting ordinance, that it would help to make enforcement more uniform. And so we're sort of at the fact-finding stage, trying to figure out what the municipalities would feel about a countywide lighting ordinance. It would still be administered or enforced at the municipal level, but it might make education a little bit easier if the code is uniform and not, differing from city to city. And then we also would like to get a lot more buy-in on the turtle lighting task force to try to figure out if there's people, at the local level that we can figure out how to make some change out there. We had about 3 cities show up to the meeting. So it'd definitely be good to get more cities involved in that. But we're looking to try to revamp the whole process because, we've been doing the same thing for years now, and I think we can all agree it's not really changing. And, it's also, we just got to figure out a better path forward. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the lighting ordinance as a whole.
Personally, I think it's a great idea. I guess I do have a question, since we have a bunch of hotels down there, and I know part of it becomes, do you start looking at changing indoor lighting? Because in the evenings, people that are at the beach, they're in a hotel room looking at the beach, they got the windows, the ground blinds are open and they got lights on inside, and that's disorienting for the turtles as well. So is that a possibility? I mean, do you look at indoor lighting that's facing the beach?
If the lighting is facing outside and it's visible, then it can be a problem. And that would still be part of the ordinance, and it's probably part of the existing ordinances in a lot of places.
Yeah,
some of ours are very old, so some of the ordinances haven't been updated in decades. So
enforcement tends to be our biggest problem. So any comments from the rest of the council?
What are some differences that the I know you're in the fact-finding stage at this point, but what are some of the issues that you've pinpointed so far that you would want the county ordinance to address that some of our local ordinances don't already address?
It'd be difficult.
What would the change?
Your ordinance is a little bit of a different factor, because your ordinance pretty much says any light is a problem, which is, it's a lot better than some of the other ordinances. I can't really go into specifics because I don't have everyone's ordinances in my head. But a lot of the ordinances are old. They haven't been updated for recent technologies. Some of them may still talk about bug bulbs. I think a lot of them, some of them mention, if it's all practical, and different nuances in the words to change lighting that kind of defeat the purpose, because, it's ambiguous. And there's just been a lot of change in technology. So the state recently came out with a new model lighting ordinance that they have in their Florida rules, which isn't a real ordinance, but it's a guide for, local governments and counties to create their own ordinance. And I think it would be a good, it introduces a lot of the new technology. It's been vetted by their professionals over and over again. So I think it would be a good starting point to try to bring in some uniformity. But I think, enforcement can't be wait for the county to send the lighting survey, and then, we'll send letters out, because that hasn't been accomplishing anything. And our lighting surveys aren't, because there's differences in the ordinance, our lighting survey doesn't necessarily mean that a light is an ordinance violation. So it really needs to be investigated separately. It just says there's lights out there. You know, whether or not it actually breaks your code it isn't related to the survey itself. The survey looks for any visible lights, whether they're turtle friendly or not. So, you know, the only way this is going to get under control is if code enforcement is actively going out there, you know, maybe on a weekly basis at night to do surveys themselves. And, you know, one thing we did find was that a lot of code enforcement wasn't even, you know, authorized to work at night. So, you know, that gets difficult when the lighting's only a problem at night and you can't go out and see it, right? So, you know, I think we've talked to other communities, and the communities that seem to be able to get this under control are ones that have professionals that are dedicated to the education and enforcement, so that they can also, you know, teach how to fix the problem. It's not just you know, your light's bad, but, you know, not that we want you to turn it off. We don't. Just, this is the type of light you should put in there, and then your lighting will be fine, you know, or how to fix it so that it's, or resources on where they can get help, like the Sea Turtle Conservancy, to get lighting retrofits that I know they were doing a lot in our community too. So that, you know, we can help to kind of move it through education and enforcement and get some change. Because right now, you know, the county sends out letters, but we don't have any enforcement capabilities. So our letters are really just information that, you know, your lighting could be a problem. And I think most people, you know, file it away in the circular filing bin as soon as it comes in. Oh, another letter from the county, you know.
But if you had a county ordinance, then you could potentially have enforcement capabilities. 'Cause I think that might be part of the issue. I mean, we have one code enforcement officer, one full-time code enforcement officer, so that we have a lot of codes to enforce, and for one person to maintain that in the city and carve out 2 hours from their 40-hour work week to go out at night 1 day a week is kind of, we got to pick and choose what we're investing in. I know that, I mean, the turtles are important, but when it comes down to some other, I mean, so if there was some enforcement assistance from the county, I think that may be helpful.
I think that could be evaluated. But all that stuff is, you know where I am, and you know where all those decisions are made. So, unless someone grants me the czarship of the beaches.
I would rather see the cities try to work their code enforcement themselves rather than the county coming in and doing code enforcement in the cities. I don't think that's a good idea.
But I think it's a good idea that we're all working to the same dance card, you know?
Right.
Yeah, we need to do that. Yeah,
John?
leave it up to us to figure out how to get it done.
It would make the updating a lot easier too, and it was, you know, one ordinance versus, you know, having to do the same thing,
Yeah.
you know, 12
John?
times.
John, what I would like to see is have the county get on board with educational programs. Whether it's through television or whatever, you have the resources, whereas these small communities don't. And when you get a family here from Iowa, they have no clue what you're talking about. And this is a repetitive problem with new people coming in every week. So whether it's through television ads, a number of the stations, Bay News 9, every time they turn on the television, that's the first thing they see is Bay News 9, particularly in hotels and condos and whatnot. So the way I see it anyhow is that we need help on the education of these people that are coming into our areas. A lot of the local people know this. I would think the problem area is the hotels and the condos that are short-term rentals. So whatever y'all could do for the small communities in that respect would be a big benefit to us.
And I'll bring that up, that, you know, to see what kind of a larger educational role we can bring to this. Obviously, sending letters out repeatedly isn't going to matter, but maybe we can direct those resources to education and leave the enforcement up to the cities. But, you know, it's got to be we both got to be, you know, working together to get this done, because, you know, a lot of people aren't going to change just out of the goodness of their heart either.
Right. And I think all of us are on board with correcting the problem.
Yeah.
Well, when we send our code enforcement out there, they're going to enforce it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But we definitely need to have both sides of that, you know, coin to get the education too, so that people know how to fix it, because it's not necessarily an easy thing to fix. And we got to make sure the codes are tightened up so that it is something that can be done.
John, did you say that currently the county is just looking at all light and they don't, do they have the equipment yet to differentiate between bad light and acceptable light?
So our surveys follow our permit conditions. But our permit only requires it the year after nourishment, but we continue following the same methodology every year, because if you tell somebody only 1 year every out of 5 that there's a problem, it doesn't get fixed. But the permit specifically says to identify any light visible. It doesn't differentiate between turtle friendly and non-turtle friendly. So a lot of lights end up on the list just following those requirements. And we try to mark down the non-turtle friendly ones, but there's a problem with when you're out there, and I'm sure the lighting, the ordinance, that's going to be one of the problems is that we need to try to fix is it's somewhat ambiguous. Whether the light, when you're just walking by, our people can't tell whether it's a turtle friendly light or not. They know it's a yellow light, but that doesn't mean it's turtle friendly.
So I've seen some studies done by the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and they were able to differentiate. And is that something the county's looking into, is making an investment into equipment that maybe they can survey quicker than what they're doing now?
Clearwater Marine Aquarium survey isn't for enforcement. It's to identify where the problem lights are so that enforcement can go out and actually see if there's a code enforcement violation. Because, like I said, right now, all the codes are different. They're not doing it per code if there's an issue.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
looking for light.
There is like spectrometers and stuff that they could use to identify whether a light is turtle friendly or not.
I think
that really needs to be in some sort of code enforcement data. I know there's a lot of databases and stuff that
Right.
people use when they're doing.
I think what I'm looking for is maybe if the county was to assist all of our municipalities with identifying the true problems, not just light in general, but the ones that are actually harmful to the turtles, it would be much easier for us to do something about it.
Yeah.
But if you just say there's light, kill it, well, that's doesn't do us much good.
Well, and that's why it's really the code enforcement officers that need to be going out there and doing these surveys at night, because it's,
I don't
not
know
an
that,
enforcement agency, CMA.
I don't know that it's the code enforcement officer to go out there and do surveys. He's out there to enforce. Somebody needs to tell him what he's looking at. That's what we do now. You send it out to us, we send them out there and go, take a look at this one. There's an issue. Then he comes back.
Yeah, I'm just relaying what it's done in a lot of other communities.
Yeah.
Like I just recently talked to Longboat Key, and they have a code enforcement officer who goes out there twice a week. During the beginning of turtle season, I think it is, and then you go out there for 4 hours at night. He said maybe 2 times a week, and then he usually ends up flexing it out on one of the other days, like to equal out to his 40 hours and stuff, and that's how they keep their lighting in check. And
Are they doing a good job on it? I mean, is that working?
yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. if you don't
Yes,
mind.
go ahead.
So we're talking about indoor lighting, right? And I'm
Yeah.
thinking of hotels and condos, and then I'm thinking of ordinances. And so how can we write ordinances that are so clear that we can understand what that means, right? So light travels so far. So what is the distance? I'm hoping things as specific as that would be included in the
If it's
ordinance.
visible,
Well, if
then
you're looking at Clearwater Beach,
yeah,
that means downtown Clearwater lights are visible.
Yeah.
So how do we address that in
most
ordinances?
of-
How specific is it? And I'm gonna check out the state ordinances, but according to your knowledge, does that address things like as specific as that?
No, because if there's light that's visible from the beach, that could still cause the problem. That could still cause that turtle to disorient. Usually they don't take into account distances. Not that I've seen. And that's why it's really got to be across the board. Otherwise, you're just going to get the disorientation in a different direction.
So is it wavelength, light wavelength?
The wavelength, it's the wavelength. It's whether or not the bulb is visible. The basic requirements are to keep it. I'm not going to try to use whatever their nomenclature is, low, long, and I don't know what it is offhand, but basically it's got to be long wavelength, and it's got to be low to the ground, as low as you can make it and still have it work so that it's not up high casting light everywhere. And it's gotta be shielded so you don't see the bulb itself, that bright part that'll, burn into your eye. You just wanna be able to let the glow go out there and put the light where it needs to be to do its job, not, spray it around where it's not doing any good in the first place. And that low wavelength is in the amber and red spectrum. Now, not every amber light might be turtle friendly, because if you just put an amber shield over it, you're not actually making it turtle friendly. You're just disguising the light so it looks like it's turtle friendly. It's still putting out the white wavelengths. But the LED light bulbs, they can really narrow it down so it's just those specific wavelengths that are going out. And the turtles can still see them. They're not visible, but it's sort of like if you tried to use a red flashlight at night, you don't see it as well, right? It's, and it doesn't travel as far. So I think that it's not as obtrusive to the turtles. From what I understand. I'm not an expert, so I may have just totally messed that up. Wow.
Well, so what's the next step at a county level? I mean, I think we've got a consensus here that
And we'll start evaluating the turtle ordinance and see if that works. It sounds like the cities want to do the enforcement themselves and continue to do that, or is that mixed, or is that, I just want to know what I'm moving forward with.
Uniform lighting regulation,
yeah,
Uniform lighting
Cities-
regulation.
do their own enforcement.
Cities do the own enforcement, county does education.
Part of that needs to be exactly what you're asking people to do as far as lighting is concerned.
Yeah.
And define the kind of lighting, because just saying, well, you need
Yeah.
to have a different kind of lighting is not gonna work.
No.
They need to define that as well.
And I think the codes, I think the lighting ordinance does define that as to what it specifically needs to be. And some ordinances go as far to say it has to be, I think, FWC certified, but it can also just meet the requirements of what FWC has. It doesn't have to go as far as to be FWC certified, because there's a lot of lights that meet the same requirements may never get sent to be certified. So I think we need to concentrate on, like you said, making sure that the bulb meets the requirements that we need, the wavelength. That, right now, yeah. Right now, that is one of the problems, is trying to locate the lights. You can get some on Amazon, but a lot of them you have to go to, lighting specific, dealers to order the lights. So, I think one thing that would be helpful is to find a way to, get our stores and our communities to carry them so that people can easily get them. It's harder to get some of the larger ones, but maybe some of the smaller ones or whatever can, if the lighting was available, that if someone could run to the store and buy one, a lot of the problem would probably be gone already. It's that next step, that you have to go. It's difficult to get. So I think one of the parts of this needs to be finding a way to get the lighting easily accessible. Whether it's giveaways, whether it's trying to, it may be as simple as, getting light bulbs and saying, if you need a turtle-friendly light bulb, just come here and pick it up, or getting places to carry them so that people can get them locally without having to order them and not know if they're getting the right thing.
yeah.
I would suggest potential, if you have time, meeting with or presenting to the individual commissions, because I have a hard time speaking on behalf of the rest of my commission. We all have our own opinions. What I might think is the right way to go may be different from the rest of them. So
I agree.
I know that this is a convenient place for you to present to all of the towns, but unfortunately, we don't get to all speak for our entire commissions.
No, and I recognize that, but we thought this would be a good first step to kind of, feel out what the consensus is, and get an idea before moving further with,
Because we all have our own challenges. I mean,
yeah.
you may like to enforce your own, but we may have a shortage on our, we want 2 code enforcement officers. We can't keep 2 to save our life. So to add on more is difficult. So each community has their own challenges that need to be considered.
I agree. I would like the rest of my council to hear what you have to say. And I think there's a lot to think about, including code enforcement. To my knowledge, we don't have any code enforcement that works at night. And so it's quite an involved process to join this effort. And I don't feel comfortable speaking for the rest of my council as well. And they might have a lot to contribute and come, and I would like to hear what they have to say as well.
We need the city managers involved as well.
I think we probably could start, if you could come up with some sort of a framework or draft of a countywide ordinance and then present that and to each of the individual councils.
Yeah, I think that might be a good, then we have something to bring forward and it's
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
me,
And if a city wants to have code enforcement with the county, they can choose to do that.
Yeah, I know we have a couple of code enforcement officers and one of them, they alternate, I think, on working on weekends, like they are at night sometimes.
This is really almost a niche sort of code enforcement where it's more environmental and technical in nature, like
Well, there may be opportunity for resource sharing. I know that's kind of one of the common goals of the Big C is where can we partner? So maybe it's something that we as Big C communities can partner with on a specific code enforcement officer that we all enter, or whoever wants to enters into an interlocal agreement we share staff
stuff
with
now,
St. Pete
yeah.
Beach. So maybe that's an opportunity we could discuss too.
You're doing with the sheriff's office, right? Or do you have your own separate code
Code
enforcement officer
enforcement.
besides the sheriff's office?
We don't use the sheriff anymore.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Something I'd like to see added to that too is that is on the hotels and on the condos where you have condo associations is to be, if we cite someone, cite the hotel because they've got to buy into educating the people that are coming into their facilities. But cite the hotel itself, cite the condo association so that we get that buy-in on helping with this. Because this has got to be a team effort.
Yeah, and it can be done. When I was over on the East Coast, the hotels there specifically told me I had to leave the curtains closed, until November. It's an active.
Well, we could take the other approach and Chiquita, you could shut the power off for us. Yeah, from April till October, you shut the power off at 8 o'clock.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll add one more thing. It's going to be tough to enforce this if there's not a practical solution. So if you're asking these businesses to break the bank to solve the problem, it may never actually happen. It may be cheaper to pay the fine. And then of course, we all know we run through this every time we have a code enforcement issue. If it goes all the way to the very end, it could be years before you actually get someone to conform.
Yeah, I know code enforcement isn't an easy job and there's no way to simplify it to make it, work very simply. But I think this is at least the first step to move forward to find a solution because I think we know that what we're currently doing isn't really getting any. We made great progress with the streetlights. I know a lot of communities are switching those out, and I think that's going to be a big help because those are some of the brightest lights out there. But once they're gone, it's still going to be the other residential lights. They just won't be able to point to the streetlight anymore and say it's the streetlight. So I think that'll be a big step, and then it'll be education. Trying to get the resources. And I think it's sort of a trifecta. You need
Perhaps an incentive plan.
Yeah.
Along with the education and code enforcement, have an have a incentive program that actually incentivizes not only the residents, but the businesses to do it. And maybe have a countywide as part of our collaboration.
And if paying the fine becomes the preferable avenue, then we just need to raise the fines. And it just tells you they're not high enough.
Yeah, and the lights sort of already done their damage when they're on. So we need to, I guess, we just have to do the best we can. And then if there's still people that won't comply, then, we'll just tell FWC we did as much as we can. And hopefully that'll be enough. This does come up during our nourishment permits. During our projects, we have to relocate, usually because of when those products occur. And if they don't want to relocate those nests to places where there's lights, so it gets gummed up. And with more nests and more turtles and more disorientations, the problem's only gonna get worse, you know? We still have relatively low numbers, so it's a good time to get it under control before it's, you know,
Mhm.
even more difficult.
Okay, well, you've got our support at getting an ordinance together, and then we schedule stuff at each of the counties, the cities. So let's do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Okay. Actually, the next item in discussion was the length of term of the officers of this organization, and that was something that was brought up by Pat Serrano, who was not here today. So
What was his issue?
well, the thought, and I had a short discussion with him over it, and is that, you know, most of us have either 2 or 3 year terms. I don't know anybody here that's got a 4-year term. You may. Lena, do you?
I'm so sorry. I'm not sure.
You don't?
I
you're not
really am.
sure how-
I'm on so many boards that I have a little cheat sheet and I don't have it with me.
No, how long are you in office though, when you? get-
My office is on 4, but I'm not quite sure if they want to alternate within council. So
Oh,
I will
okay.
verify that.
Well, I guess the point is that, you know, with 3 stops on the progression of our officers and 2 years in each stop, you're talking a 6-year span for somebody to go through the whole thing. So, you know, in most cases, people, you know, if they don't run for reelection or they don't get elected in the first place after their first term, then you drop somebody out. I know even though the mayor's council has 1-year stops, we had a case where just a couple of years ago where who was it? Derek Seidel from Oldsmar was the vice president. He was going to the presidency and he got beaten in an election. So, you know, Woody Brown skipped through all 3 spots in 2 years.
And that happens, and that's the mechanism to work with that.
Yeah.
I think shortening it to 1 year is not a good idea. Need to leave it 2 years, let it fill in. We've been doing it for 30 years. It's worked pretty good.
That was my first question. How long has this been in this?
Long time.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, no, I'm ambivalent one way or the other. You know, I don't know that it makes a big difference.
Hell, you only learned to do a job in 1 year. I mean,
Oh, well, anyhow, so I guess the consensus is leave it alone. Yeah.
Well, that's a consensus from one person.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
that's
I'd
why I'm
like to
asking.
hear,
I
I'm
haven't
not
heard
saying
any
I
other
disagree,
comments.
but I think some discussion would be good.
Okay, well, we're here.
Especially from the 3 of you who are currently serving. I mean, you're in the midst of a 6-year
well, I'll tell you.
process. How are you feeling?
Well, actually, mine is only 5 because who was it that got beat? Leslie Nataro got beat in an election. So that's that pushed me ahead a year. But I spent 2 years as VP and then 2 years here. And I want to tell you, after this, my clerk's operation has been wonderful and they're tired. 2 years of doing this. You know, when they first took it on, I said, yeah, I'm sorry, but they did tell me that they were looking at it as an adventure. And after 2 years, they're just dying for it to be over. So anyway, but that's the only thing I can see as a downside, because when you're sitting in the president thing, you're coordinating so much and your staff really gets worked pretty hard. At least mine has. So that's my only concern about it. Yeah, it's working. So like to Bill's point.
So you're
Leave it alone.
done you're done this year?
Yeah.
This is your last one? Okay.
When is the changeover? Do you know, when, is it in our bylaws when the changeover is?
It's April. It's right after the March elections.
So this coming April 2023 is when your term and we'll elect new.
Al goes out, Mary Beth goes in, Cookie moves up, and then we vote. You have a committee to pick somebody else to move into secretary treasurer.
Anybody want to take on that? No. We got any volunteers for the secretary? Treasurer?
Well, that's what your committee is going to be for, is to get that.
Oh, come on, John. Yeah. Okay, all right, so let's leave it alone and we'll truck on forward. If another council gets up here and wants to change it at a future date, decades down the road, fine, let them try it. Oh, okay. That's pretty much all we had. Let's go on, and I don't know that we've got any representatives from our legislature here, do we? Oh, Robin, you can do that for us?
Yeah, I'm a representative from the legislature, but I do have, you want to come up?
Yeah, come on up so you can.
And I've been working really hard and not having to come up here in a long time. Hi.
Hi.
I'm here. First of all, the final bill drafting deadline is tomorrow for committees.
And then Representative Cheney just wanted me to share with you that I'm going to read what she typed. So excuse the grammatical error. It's coming from her typing. My balloon release bill, of which many of you are aware of, I think, as litter, giving local authority to issue a litter done for any amount of balloons released. Florida statute still allows 9 or less to be released, but you could incur a litter fine for it. So don't do it. You can still have a happy life and not harm wildlife, pollute our beautiful beaches and waterways. She said that it looks at, you can issue a litter citation or ticket and fine under your ordinances on your discretion. So similar, I would say, to when we were successful in getting a ban on the bikes on the sand, on the beaches, and then y'all compile a local ordinance together, which y'all did a great job because you're pretty consistent. That's what it looks like the pathway for this bill would act like for you.
Okay.
That's that update. Oh, and RJ was just told me too that he is anticipating another short-term rental bill to be filed momentarily.
So what else is new?
Right.
So you're just gonna drop that bomb and leave another
Right,
short-term rental bill?
Well, you
What
know
does
that
that mean?
happens every session.
I don't have bill number, and we did share the first one, last week, as you all are aware of, requiring short-term rental companies to have a person in the municipality that they're operating. I don't have the language right in front of me, but we did share it in our action alert, and we did a link to both the House and the Senate bills for that. But apparently the bill that's up and coming is supposed to, and I think Mayor Will is aware of this, to provide you as municipalities some more tools in your toolkit to combat the challenges that you have with short-term rentals and possibly, okay. No, that's the old one, Jess. And just more tools that you can combat the issue, but keeping grandfathering in at the moment.
Mhm. Okay.
One of the things that
Wait, the long eye roll all the way
Yeah.
over. Okay, thank you.
I roll better than cussing. Go ahead.
Yeah.
one of the things that we were talking about, since there's such an uproar in the communities right now this year is possibly, and if the residents are, I believe, as in an uproar as the staffs are, to maybe have a legislation day where all of us, hire a bus and from each of our cities and pack them in and go up there. I thought that, to show that we're together on it and, if the citizens are as frustrated as we are, give them the opportunity to, we'll get a bus from each of our communities and a day, and we'll go up on the, the steps and make some noise and share some comments about how we feel about it. I don't know how all of you feel,
You don't think
we've done it before.
You don't think we've made that known to them, how we feel?
I know, but you know what? It's something that we need to continue to do because
And we just did it 3 months ago when we had those guys sit before us and they told us exactly what they felt. They were going to go by whatever their executive committee said. They don't give a damn what the people think.
it doesn't matter. I think to show that we have a voice, that we're unified and that we are doing something and we continue to do it regardless of what they say or do. I mean,
They don't care what they don't care what anybody
well,
thinks.
I
They're going
don't
to do
care
what they want to do.
I don't care what they think.
That's
okay?
exactly right.
So, I mean, I think that we need to continue, to fight the fight.
Do you see
Okay.
him in here?
Okay. Okay.
If I
All right,
may,
that's
if
enough.
I may, the chamber has a model that we can share with you if you just did decide to do that. We would recommend, it's too late this year. I mean, you'd want to go and do that, prior to them actually getting in session when they're drafting bills. And I will commend you, Mayor Kennedy and Mayor Will, because for many years, we've been talking about this as we know, but we commend your cities because we know it's a rough road, but we've employed to say, get creative. put your brains together and get creative. And I see that's what you all are doing. I think that creative needs to keep happening when they're out of session and right before they go to session, especially when they're in bill drafting. And as Mayor Will did, and he presented a draft of your bill at the delegation meeting, if I'm correct. Yeah. So, I mean, if you did do that, we have a model and we could share it with you to make it easier, but that would be our recommendation.
I disagree with that too. So, I mean, I just think that regardless of if they're in or not, the fact that we are together, we go up there, there are bills being presented all over the place. So, I mean, I really think that, it just shows, my father taught government for 30 years and he said, you fight whether you lose or not, if you know what you're fighting for is the right thing. I'm just saying.
As a reminder, the Florida League of Cities has legislative action days
Correct,
every year.
yeah.
That this year is April 3rd through the 5th. And one of the Florida League of Cities priorities this year is short-term rentals. And city officials from across the state go to Tallahassee all together to voice our concerns on our priorities. So that seems like it lines up pretty well with
So you're
what
saying
you're
April
asking.
3rd?
Yeah.
So if we wanted to,
And we go
be unified.
gather
have-
at City Hall on this and do the rah-rah publicity
I agree.
stuff and then go around to the Capitol and meet with our legislators, and the Suncoast League of Cities schedules all the appointments with each one of them throughout the day, do all the legwork for that and set up the meeting. So I did also want to point out that so if you're not subscribed to the Florida League of Cities legislative updates, they send those out whenever there's a bill that comes out that it does pertain to one of the priorities. And this was sent out on the 20th. There is a short-term rental bill that has been filed in the Senate and the House that would codify the ability of state or of local governments to require vacation rental owners or operators to designate basically contact information. So it's adding to the bill it's saying this subsection does not prohibit a local law or ordinance from requiring a vacation rental owner to designate and maintain at all times with the local government the name and contact information of a responsible party who's capable of responding to complaints. So that's an addition from I believe two Republican senators and representatives that are adding to, that are giving us more power to do something, at least require contact information to be able to resolve those issues. So potentially moving in the right direction. And that's
Absolutely.
giving us one more tool in the tool belt, and that's being put forward. So that's an example of what our efforts can produce is if we give them little good ideas that they might, rather than saying, we want to be able to ban all Airbnbs, they're not gonna go along with that. But something like this, they might say, okay, that sounds reasonable. We're willing to put that forward.
Airbnb is just an advertising platform anyway.
I know, I'm
Yeah,
using that
but
as a
I-
term.
And I had several discussions with Senator Brandis over the years about that. And some of the bills that I looked at made a lot of sense in that they were demanding emergency notification. They were doing inspections twice a year. They were collecting bed tax. All that stuff was great and that they were going to administer it. But what I told him was the location, duration, and frequency of these rentals should be our job, and we should be free to do whatever we need to. And I don't know if it's a money thing with the bed tax or whether it's, just a freedom to do what you want with your property thing. I'm not sure what's driving them, but
What you just said, freedom to do what they want to with their property. That's where they're all coming from.
yeah.
Well, those bills are Senate Bill 92 and House Bill 105 for the short-term rentals. So I'd suggest
Okay.
if you think that that's a good idea, that you reach out, not just when we go to Tallahassee, but reach out now and tell our representatives that we support that.
But there's nothing affecting grandfathering or anything like that.
Doesn't change that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, when we changed ours, which is in 04, we actually loosened it up from 3 months to 1 month minimum. And thank God we still got it.
Mhm.
Dave wants to say something. Just Dave.
This
Mayor
Dave.
Al?
That's Dave.
Yes,
I'm
to,
sorry.
to Cookie's point earlier about being unified and continuing the fight, I spoke, as Robin mentioned, last week at our Pinellas County Legislative Delegation regarding the negative effects of preemption on local government. You know, that prevents us from governing, but more importantly, how that removes the voice of the resident from participating in their town, in their local government, in the direction of their town. So we were given 2 minutes. I came up with a short speech. I'd like to give that to the rest of the Big C members to see if you want to sign on and send that as a unified body if you support the speech. Well, I'll pass that out to you guys and then
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can take a look at
yeah.
it for next meeting, but
Yeah, okay.
being unified, as Cookie is saying here. Also, there is, and Tyler's aware, the Florida League of Cities has a legislative agenda, which I'd also like to pass out to the mayors to see if this group will sign on to that. And one of the sections is supporting legislation that restores authority to local governments for the regulation of short-term rental properties as necessary for quality of life. So I'm sure that's something that we could all support.
Mhm.
And as far as HB 105, and I've spoken with RJ, and I don't want to sound negative,
Yeah.
but we were told that there were 3 things we can't do, which is ban, limit frequency and duration. So anything else we can do. So I'm glad that they would affirm that we can ask or require this contact information, but that's already in our ordinance.
I will double check on that, and I know you just read some of that data, but it's my understanding that there's a movement to try to require that they actually have a physical office location within the geographic area they're serving. So if we're going down Golf Boulevard, we only use the technology company Airbnb,
but there's no, a representative office stop for an Airbnb. We've got, Resort Rentals, TRS, and all of those local firms. But I think that that's the motivation as part of that language.
Well, I'm glad to hear that they are actually looking and trying to work with something, but I just wanted to point out that we are already able to do that.
I'm going to reach out to Casey Cook with the Florida League of Cities because he's a friend and just kind of talk to him about April 3rd. And when we went up, I guess it was 4 years ago, and we spoke before committees and the whole thing was planned out. We won't be able to speak before committees, but at least we would have an opportunity to be at the city hall there and just kind of get what he thinks about bringing some busloads of people from our communities. And if any of the other communities would like to be involved, we can, email me or we can get together and talk about it or and see what your thoughts are for April 3rd. Thank you.
One other thing this is doing to us with the short-term rentals, it's killing long-term rentals. And that's where we need to be able to be bringing people into our communities to work at our businesses. We don't have that anymore. No one can move to the beach and rent an apartment or a condo or a home and work out here. They've got to come in. That's also contributing to our traffic problems that we have. Everybody's having to drive to the beach because they can't afford to be out here anymore. And all these short-term rentals are in fact a lot of condominiums and apartments and homes that were long-term rentals. We're losing those totally out here at the beach.
Good point. Good point. Okay, David, you want to send it over and I'll get.
Yes, I have hard
get it.
copies. I'll give everybody right now. So while you're
Oh,
all
okay,
here.
okay.
Is anybody familiar with HB 41?
Is that a current?
Yes.
From the current section?
Yes.
Yes, that's it's been
HB
proposed now.
41.
An initiative or referendum process in regard to any development order or any amendment to the land development regulations is prohibited. So you have referendums regarding zoning, going to be prohibited. So another preemption where your resident's voice is being silenced.
Exactly. That's exactly
So
right.
that's what I'm the point I'm trying to make is we talk about vacation rentals, and everybody knows that. But vacation rentals are a result of a preemption. So,
And now they won't, now you can't do a referendum like we wanted to do where everybody could show what their people think. Now they're going
correct.
against that.
You're, in Largo, they just had a referendum regarding a sports complex that was somewhat contested back and forth. It would wipe that referendum out because this goes retroactive back to 2011. So your voice in the community, which way you want your community to go, the debate is taken away, the discussion is taken away. The inability, I'm not pointing to, for short-term rentals or against short-term rentals. What we're stating or fighting for is the ability to have the discussion. For you, the resident, to weigh in on the pros and cons. Is this how you want your community to go? I think that's the whole basis of our, that's why we're here.
That's what government's about.
Yeah, and it sounds familiar.
What was the number on that bill again, Dave?
41.
41.
David, I think the problem that we're all going to run into is that the majority of municipalities in Florida actually do want short-term rentals.
Well, what that would be up to those, yeah, and that's fine. That's up to the
Absolutely.
resident.
Well,
Right.
so if you're listening to the majority, well, you don't have to listen to us. And that's basically what they're doing is they're listening to, it's much easier to say, okay, we're going to make sure that you can have these. And we don't really care about the little guys along the coast. It's big money for some of these towns, especially around Orlando and places like that. I'm sure they're racking up big time, but
I understand that.
you have to get more people on board than just us. We have to really rally together whenever we go to these League of Cities events. Do we come out and we're energized, and do we contact one another, or do we come home and then we're angry? And I think that's the problem, is that we're still not loud enough.
Well, as you say, some communities would like to have that, but that's up to that community.
Correct. I agree.
Going for the, to make our own decisions, which is what, I mean, it's always been the duty, responsibility and of the local government to adopt regulations regarding permitted uses of land. That's called zoning. So that's been taken away.
I totally understand.
So if some town wants, if you want to have them in your town, then your people would like that, that's great.
No, we don't.
We don't, yes.
And I'm not
yeah,
saying
I'm
that.
saying-
What I'm saying, though, is it's
The
easy
inability.
to ignore us whenever you've got so many people that are just willing to lay down and say, yeah, we'll go for that. And so now you've got it throughout the entire state, and we don't have a voice.
Well, as John pointed out earlier, the other effects of that are this housing crisis. Well, these short-term rentals remove that inventory from where somebody used to live there. Somebody used to rent that apartment or live in that house, and now it's a vacation home. So your inventory is gone, and now, of course, your prices go up.
And that part of that too is the owners are looking at how much money can I make if I rent by weekends for a lot of money, or rent it by months for less money. And
Right.
so it's an economic decision for them. And it ruins us. But yeah, somehow I just can't believe that we still have something that says home rule in our state constitution, and those guys in Tallahassee continually.
Well, every session, it averages 7 preemption bills per session. So it's a little bit each time. So at some point, why are we going to come here and turn the lights on
Yeah,
when we're not making any of these decisions?
yeah.
Local
Short-term
voices should be making.
short-term
local
rentals is
decisions.
just one of many examples where the power is taken away from the local government.
Yeah.
The excuse is, and I believe in that, is property rights. I have properties and I don't want to be told what to do, right?
But.
But that's just being used as an excuse, I think, to consistently remove the power away from local government in that instance.
Yes, and I've heard that argument, property rights.
Mhm.
So the answer to that is that when have property rights ever been an uninhibited free-for-all? What is zoning?
Well, what happens is you say, okay, your property rights may be one thing, but if you exercising full reign over your own property is infringing on somebody else's, then that's where the thing gets diminished. And
Right, well, you
Yeah.
have, of course, what about the property rights of the person next door? But what I'm saying is that just because I own a piece of property, I can't make that property, you know, whatever I want it to be.
Yeah, well, you
There's
can't, and that's
a
my point.
residential zone.
Yeah, well, and that's it.
So
and
when you
that's
say
why we
property
do
rights,
that.
it's never been an uninhibited free for all.
Okay, we could go on for.
Yes, we could
so
go on
let's-
forever. I'm
Let's
getting fired up.
cut it short there.
Put it on the next agenda.
I'll take these and get them scanned and we'll send them around.
I have copies for everybody.
Oh, you do
I
have
know,
copies.
once you
Okay,
leave the
great.
building, then I won't see you till next, you know, go around.
Okay.
so.
All right, sounds good to me then to get them around for everybody.
Perfect.
Quickly, let's go through city events. Let's start down there with John.
Okay, of course, this morning, we've got the Wednesday morning market. So as you leave, just stop by Madeira Way and spend some money. And a couple of days to save. We've got the Grunt Hunt, which is one of our fishing tournaments coming up in late March. And also the Grouper Gala that we started actually this past year during our 75th anniversary. So that'll be coming up in early May. That's all I've got.
Lena?
I want to invite everyone to our downtown. We're in the process of revitalizing it, and we have live music in the closed streets of Cleveland Street every Friday and Saturday. So please come and join us.
Indian Shores once again is having a St. Patrick's Day Festival after we've been off since 2019. So we're all excited about putting it together again and hopefully everybody will come. We also have a Sunday morning market through May in front of the municipal center. So everybody should come and spend money.
All quiet in Bel Air Beach.
All quiet and ready.
It's all quiet in Redington Shores, but I wanted to thank John and Madeira Beach for allowing Redington Shores to use their facility. We appreciate it because we cannot do this at our town hall. So thank you so much.
Okay, if you go Cookie.
We have the Winterfest coming up on February 18th. It's called Winterfest on the Rocks. It's at the Calvary Episcopal Church. It starts at 10 a.m. It's a nice event if anyone would like to stop in. And I think that's enough to have going on. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Oh, it's quiet in Bel Air Shore.
David?
In Redington Beach on Saturday, February 18th, we are having our second annual Mardi Gras Golf Cart Parade, which will end at our town park. And then we will have our gumbo cook-off. So everybody is welcome to come out and participate in that.
An event for my colleagues up here. We have the Suncoast League of Cities meeting this Friday at 11:30 at the city of Temple Terrace. It's going to be held at the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club. And we do have the president of the Florida League of Cities, Jolene Caraballo, coming to speak with us. So would be a good opportunity to chat with her about those short-term rental issues, and also to hear, we're going to be discussing our legislative priorities for the Suncoast League of Cities and be presenting that final slate of priorities to the group. And then we have in Treasure Island, the Treasure Island Fire Rescue Chili Cook-Off coming up on Friday, February 17th at 5 p.m. We usually have like 15 to 20 chili chefs that come out, and it all benefits our Treasure Island Fire Association.
All quiet.
All quiet. Oh, okay. St. Pete Beach has, we're starting our spring concert series, which is just actually an extension of what we do in October every year anyway. And that's starting next in March. And we also have the Sunday market we do on Corey expands once a month into a crafts fair as well as Sunday market. And Saturdays down in Paso Grill, we have a Saturday midday crafts market down there as well. So please come out and see us. But I say, unless there's any objections, we adjourn.